So, one of the videos YouTube recommended to me was from Atomic Abe Productions. And it was a video where they talked about the behind the scenes of the Backdoor pilots that came from Who's the Boss. Now, in case you guys don't know what a Backdoor pilot is, essentially it is a series of episodes that are used on a seasonal basis or every other seasonal basis to pretty much test the audience and the viewers at home on whether or not they'd like to have a series based on said characters that become the focus of this episode of this more established iconic series. In other words, the main characters get replaced by these new characters, and everything, to see how fans will react to them, see how, the audience, the studio audience attending is going to react to them and all that. So yeah, that is basically what a backdoor pilot is. Basically where the main cast gets replaced, by the newer cast, or at least the potential new cast. Now, sometimes if the backdoor pilot doesn't succeed and a spin-off is not picked up, that doesn't necessarily mean the core cast of characters is going to get ignored. No, sometimes the potential will be there for these characters to work in some capacity, and they'll be brought back in for future seasons. This has been proven in many cases. Who's the Boss, I think, has done it. Married with Children has done it. You name it. If a backdoor pilot episode for a potential spin-off series doesn't work, usually those characters will make a return in some shape or form within the series they tried to be spun off from. But there are cases where a backdoor pilot, I should say, will succeed. When it comes to Who's the Boss, as the old saying goes, third time's a charm. They tried it with Charmed Life, which would have starred Fran Dresser. They tried it with Mona, which would have focused on Mona's character from Who's the Boss, running a hotel in New York City with her brother. And then Living Dolls, which would have had the connection of one of Samantha Maselli's best friends being part of a dance studio. And I do apologize for that notification there if you heard it. Being part of a dance studio and living with a group of girls and the motherly headmistress figure, whatever you want to call her, instructor, whatever you want to call her. And that third potential spin-off, backdoor pilot episode, was the one that pretty much got the green light. The only thing they had to do from a behind-the-scenes standpoint was change up some of the cast. For example, Vivica A. Fox, got replaced by Halle Berry. Yeah, the same Halle Berry that went on to fame as Storm in the X-Men and played that one female character in the 1994 Flintstones movie. Now, with that said though, the one question I think anybody obviously has is why? Why do the studios and networks do this? Why do they use episodes, once or twice a season or every other season, as backdoor pilots to try to spin off into new series? It's real simple. It's because they're trying to find the same success that they found with the series they're trying to spin off the show from. In other words, they're trying to find that magic again. They're trying to catch it lightning in a bottle again. And because they're trying to do that, they also believe that if they succeed, not only will they get a new series out of it that's based in the same, timeline and continuity, as the series is spun off from, with potential crossover episodes here and there, but financially they can rake in the big bucks. They can rake in the big bucks and everything, and hopefully find the same kind of success they did with the new series like they did with the original series it was spun off from. That's what I was trying to say. Now, does it always work? Is it always a success? No. It's not always going to work. It's not always going to be a success. I mean, like I said, Who's the Boss had 3 attempts until the third one, Living Dolls, got the green light. The other 2 did not. And same, easy for me to say, same could be said for other, shows that did the same thing. Married with Children, I think, has done it a couple of times, and neither one of them ever succeeded, as far as I know. What else did it? What other shows did it? I can't really think of more, but I can tell you one good example of how it can be done, how it can be a success, even if you don't really need to use, an episode as a backdoor pilot. And that's Perfect Strangers. Because they already had the established character of Harriet and her husband Carl. So all you had to do was build upon that and say, okay, instead of doing a backdoor pilot focusing mainly on them, let's do an entirely new show and treat it like it's a sneak peek at a potential new series coming out in the fall. And guess what? Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. In the case of Family Matters, which is a spinoff of Perfect Strangers somewhat, it was a success. But Harriet and Carl's involvement in Perfect Strangers showed that you don't always have to rely on doing a backdoor pilot for them. Sometimes you just have to occasionally maybe go back and forth to where they live with their family and going back to where the main characters of Perfect Strangers live, and so on. But you don't always have to worry, you don't always have to worry potentially of the network and studio execs saying, okay, let's get a new series out of this. Let's see what happens. You don't have to worry about that. You don't. Because you pretty much already have everything set up and ready to go. All you have to do is just go back and forth, if you will, with the characters in their living environments. And then maybe take the premise of, Harriet and Carl's relationship and all that gets established on Perfect Strangers and say, let's run with that. Let's see what happens, if we give it its own little series. And kind of treat it, like a sneak peek, which is a secret way of saying, here's the pilot to a new series. Let's hope you like it. And if it works, it works. And we get a new series. And if it doesn't, then, hey, you only have that, one sneak peek and, the vision of what potentially could have been, and that's it. Potentially that's it. But honestly, there are ways to make a spin-off series based in the same continuity, as a show. There, are ways of doing that. You don't necessarily have to go the backdoor pilot route, with an episode of an iconic series or an established series. You don't always have to do that. But there are other shows that have done this too, like I said, where they would use an episode sometimes to, as a backdoor pilot, and sometimes, just like with Family Matters, sometimes they don't really do that, but because maybe the sneak peek, which is secretly a pilot, doesn't get picked up, that sneak peek gets integrated into the episode rotation of this show that it was supposed to be spun off from. So basically by doing that, by putting it in that, kind of manner, if you will, it feels like it becomes a backdoor pilot. One of the shows that my mom likes watching, and she's loved watching this since it came out, is Golden Girls. And Golden Girls has had several episodes throughout its run, mainly towards the end or in the middle of the series, where they will use an episode as a backdoor pilot. They've done this several times. And whether or not they succeed is another story. Obviously there are times, I think there was maybe once or twice they actually succeeded, but that success didn't last but one season, and that was it. So there have been opportunities after opportunities, for them to do it, but it never happens. And I think there may have been one time where they did do a series with a new core cast of characters that had appearances on Golden Girls. I think at one or two times, they actually decided to do an episode, just like, let's say, Family Matters was done, sort of like a sneak peek of a potential new series coming in the fall, and it didn't work. Unlike Family Matters, it did not succeed. Nobody wanted to see it, so NBC didn't, I think it was NBC, they didn't pick it up. They didn't pick it up. So Golden Girls, pretty much took, I think, that episode and had it put into the rotation to act like a backdoor pilot, even though it necessarily really wasn't. The same could be said for Family Matters. If nobody wanted to watch that episode of Family Matters when it was given a sneak peek and everything when it was, that episode of Family Matters, in my opinion, would have been rotated right into the episodic run of Perfect Strangers and just treated like a backdoor pilot, even though it initially wasn't. But yeah, that's why studios do this, no matter how they do it, whether it's using an episode or so from an iconic series to do it, or maybe taking the elements that they already have established and saying, okay, let's go from here, let's see what happens here, let's test the waters with this sneak peek, Studios do this because they're trying to, like I said, find that same kind of magic, that same kind of lightning in the bottle that they found with the series that they're spinning, these ideas off of. They're trying to do so. And mainly, of course, that means they want to try to see if they can make more money out of it. Because if they get the green light, if you will, what that means is not only do you get more, not only have you captured lightning in a bottle again, not only have you found that magic or found that you still have that magic to, make something good, but financially the merchandise that can come from it, will be rolling in. The viewership numbers hopefully will go up, and everything. And that's why studios in the long run, they do this. That's why they do it, pretty much. It's not because, we just want to see what happens and all that. No. Or, hey, we want to try to see how the audience will react if we did this, or troll the audience by saying, hey, let's do an episode like this and then never visit it again. No, they do this. They do this because they want to see, if they can capture that magic in, get that lightning back in a bottle once more, make some money. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Because one of the ideas that they know they can get from it is potential crossovers. They can get potential crossovers from it. And, if that happens, then good for them too. But the other question is, do they necessarily always have to go this route? No. No, they don't. Sometimes if they feel confident enough, they could just say, hey, we got a new show like Family Matters. We got a new show like Step by Step. And we're going to debut them with a first season and see what happens. And if fans gravitate towards it, guess what? You get more seasons out of it. If fans don't gravitate towards it, then that season, that initial inaugural season's the only seasons it's going to get. And that's it. But guess what? In the case of Family Matters and Step by Step and so on, fans gravitated towards it. They wanted more. They wanted more. And I think it essentially helped Family Matters because they got a sneak peek months before getting, a regular run on TGIF, on ABC, and then eventually CBS towards the end of its series. But yeah, they don't necessarily have to use episodes as backdoor pilots, or in a way take the elements of certain supporting characters and say, hey, let's do a sneak peek, sneak peek pilot, in the time frame of series finales and season finales. They don't have to do that. They could just roll the dice and take their chances and see what happens. So yeah, they don't have to do it. But they do it because, as Atomic Abe Productions puts it, it's a lot cheaper and easier to utilize and work with. You don't have to worry about, certain other expenses. By using episodes of iconic series that you're going to try to, spin these new shows off of, in the process, basically, financially, it's a lot less stressful. It's a lot less stressful and easier to utilize. And also, again, you're taking that core audience, that core fan base, and saying, okay, if you like Who's the Boss, or if you like Married with Children, you're going to like this. And yeah, it might take people a bit when they first see it to be like, what is this? For them to realize, they're using this episode to spin off a new series, to see how we would react to a new show and everything. And whether or not they react positively or not, no, that's going to be in the viewership numbers, the ratings and all that, and the studio audience's reaction. That's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be. But here's the one thing I do notice. I think when I look at, let's say, going back to Who's the Boss, why I think Living Dolls succeeded is, unlike the other two potential spinoffs that they were trying to do, Charmed Lives and Mona, there was not that much emphasis, even though she was in it, and there was that connection of, the mother figure or teacher figure connection, sorority rise with Angela, Judith Light's character, and even though Alyssa Milano's Samantha character was in it, there was more originality. There was more originality to the premise to the presentation and more focused on the new characters than there were on, established characters, that were from the show that this was being spun off from. Charmed Lives, I think, didn't do well because of the fact that even though they had Fran Drescher as one of the leads, Judith Light was involved. So there was still that familiarity to what it felt like, a Who's the Boss episode, just co-starring Judith Light, if you will, or starring Judith Light's character, Angela. The same with the Mona show. Yeah, that had the premise to be good, but again, it's Mona, and you don't want to have to, you don't want to have a series that's going to mainly focus in that if not majority of the time, focus on the Mona character that you already can see starring in an episode of Who's the Boss that might come on before it. You don't want to do that, and because of that familiarity, and them feeling basically like an extension of Who's the Boss anyway, it didn't, I think that's why it didn't work. But to me, Living Dolls had enough originality to it, and everything, to where you had that connection, but it felt completely as its own. It felt like its complete own series with, a connection to the series it's being spun off from, but, had basically 90% enough to be, identified as completely its own thing. So yeah, to me, one of the things that depends on a backdoor pilot or a sneak peek special pilot, if you will, succeeding, is that the core cast of characters and the premise are all original enough to where you'll know there's that connection, but it'll still feel more original, more fresh, if you will, to an audience and a viewer audience at home, that the audience themselves might gravitate and say, hey, we want more of that. We want to see more. So yeah, in the end, backdoor pilots, they can be a blessing. I do apologize for the notification again. They can be a blessing and they cannot be a blessing. They can work and they cannot work. And some of the things that make them work is if you have that connection, but you have enough originality to where it feels like its own different thing. It feels like its own original idea. And all that. That's one way it helps. That's one way it succeeds. Because, if not, and you have characters from the show it's being spun off from still present in a big way, that's going to hurt it, in my opinion. That's going to hurt it. But overall, like I said, backdoor pilots, in closing, I think can work. It's just how they're utilized. It's just how they are, pretty much, utilized and worked around. And basically, if there's enough originality to differentiate that episode, from, or difference that backdoor pilot episode, I should say, from, the series it's being based off of, it's being spun off from, that fans will want to gravitate towards it and say, hey, we want more of that because hey, even though we know it's connected to this show and it's in the same universe and stuff, we want this, because it feels different, it feels fresh. But what are you guys' thoughts? What are your thoughts on backdoor pilots? Let me know down below in the comments. Live chat during the premiere. Love to hear from each and every one of you. And until then, I'm sorry if I did sound repetitive or ramblish. I'm kind of expecting my mom to call because that's what she does around this time. Because it's a break time, just about. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. And until next time, I will talk to y'all later.